Good morning and welcome to the San Diego County Childhood Obesity Initiative Mini-Grant Program webinar. My name is Dan Fesperman. I'm the Director at Community Health Improvement Partners, or CHIP. We're excited to be hosting our first ever webinar on the Mini-Grant Program. Our organization seeks to advance long-term solutions to priority health needs through collaboration and community engagement. CHIP serves as the backbone to a number of collective impact initiatives, including the San Diego County Childhood Obesity Initiative, or COI. Today, we'd like to take a few minutes to provide some background on the COI, and then we'll talk through parts of the application and past projects. Lastly, we'll go over some recommendations to create a strong application. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the comment box, and we'll do our best to answer all of the questions at the end of the webinar. Now I'm going to pass it on to Nina Ghatan, Manager of the COI, to get us started.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Nina Ghatan, Manager at Community Health Improvement Partners. And I just want to start by saying when we decided to host this webinar as one of the projects of the community domain, we weren't sure if there would be actual interest in a webinar, so we're really excited to see that over 30 partners have registered for the event. We hope this is a good use of your time and would also like you to know that following the presentation, there will be a recording of this. So if there's something that you missed, or if if there's someone that's unable to participate, a link to the recording will be available on our website within the next week or so. So I'm going to start by giving just a brief overview of the COI. We're a multi-sector coalition with the mission of reducing and preventing childhood obesity by advancing policy systems and environmental change through collective impact. We were established in 2006 by the County Board of Supervisors to coordinate and sustain countywide childhood obesity prevention efforts, and we're currently working with over 150 partners to support these efforts. The photo in the slide is the cover of our action plan, which was most recently updated in 2015. This document acts as a roadmap for improving health, and it includes evidence-based and promising practices for our 7 areas of focus, which include government, healthcare, schools and after schools, early childhood, community, media, and business. The Mini-Grant Program is a project of our community domain, so I'd just like to take a quick minute to thank our community domain partners for their ongoing support with this program. They helped with developing the application and with the really difficult job of selecting the mini-grant recipients the past 2 years. So their support has been much appreciated. Now we're just going to hop into the mini-grant program overview. The focus of the mini-grant is to create environmental changes to the physical or social environment that promote healthy behaviors throughout the community. These can include placemaking, walking and bike path improvements, hydration stations, beautification projects, playground equipment, and community gardens. I would like to note that these are just some examples, so please do not feel like you need to limit yourself to just these activities that are listed. For the award information, we'll be awarding mini-grants that range between $500 to $5,700 to support collaborative projects that align with the COI goals. Those goals include increasing healthy eating and physical activity. The total award amount is $5,700, and the grant application is available on our website, www.sdcoi.org. As far as who is eligible to apply, we encourage resident-led community advocacy groups to apply with support of a fiscal sponsor. I'll go into a little bit more detail about the fiscal sponsor shortly. It's also open to community-based nonprofit organizations, city and tribal governments, in addition to San Diego County schools and districts. So for resident-led community groups that are interested in applying for funding, they'll need to do so with support of a fiscal sponsor. A fiscal sponsor can be a city or tribal school district or a nonprofit organization that's tax exempt, and they would just need to provide a letter of commitment on the organization's letterhead, and they'll also need to be listed on the application. If by chance the resident-led community group is selected as a recipient of funding, the funding will be channeled through that fiscal sponsor. So COI would develop a letter of agreement with the fiscal sponsor, and then the fiscal sponsor would then distribute the funding to the community group. So high priority is given to projects that meet the following criteria that serve economically disadvantaged communities or residents, projects that have the greatest reach and impact, and those projects that demonstrate a collaboration with community stakeholders. Now I'm going to just briefly go through some examples of environmental change. Those can include placemaking projects that transform underutilized spaces in the underutilized public spaces that benefit the community. In the photo, it's a pocket park that's currently in East Village, and so that's a great use to transform this space into somewhere that the community can use. In addition to that, funding can support community gardens, walking and bike path improvements, intersection murals, and pocket parks. Now, as far as allowable versus unallowable expenses, funding can be used to purchase supplies such as paint, lumber, seed, soil, all of those types of project-related expenses. In addition to permits and other supplies, projects can also use no more than 50% of the funding for consultant fees. So an example of this would be an artist. If you're wanting to do a mural, whether it's intersection mural or a mural on the side of the building, we understand that not all organizations have that type of staff that's super artistic. So if you'd like to hire a consultant, that's perfectly acceptable. As far as unallowable activities, those include staff salaries, in addition to fundraising events, cash prizes, religious items or activities, and the purchase of unhealthy foods and beverages. We also reserve the right to identify additional unallowable activities. I would like to just take a moment to distinguish between a consultant fee versus staff salary. So a consultant fee is someone that may have expertise that you wouldn't necessarily have on staff. So earlier I just gave that example of hiring an artist. An unallowable expense of staff salary would be, let's say you don't necessarily have the staff to do the project management or to help support implementation of the project. That would not be an allowable expense. You also cannot underwrite any of your staff salary into the grant. So I hope that clears it up, but if you have any additional questions, feel free to type them in the comment box and we can address that later on. Now we're going to talk about some of the recipients. Our first recipient was National School District, and they were funded for a Biking for Health program. This project included funding for bike racks and providing bike helmets and locks at 2 elementary schools in National City. The total project cost was $2,050, and the committee really felt that this was a strong application because parents had identified the lack of safe spaces to secure bikes as a barrier for allowing their children to bike to school. So this project was a collaboration with Rady Children's Hospital Safe Routes to School team in partnership with the National City Police Department. They hosted bike rodeos at each school to teach children how to bike safely. They also hosted a Bike to School Day in May where 25 students biked to school. Here's a before photo, and then these are some photos from the ribbon cutting. Next, we're going to talk about Bayside Community Center. Their project was the Linda Vista Intersection Mural Network. The intersection mural is to be painted in the center of an intersection, which is near the Linda Vista Elementary School. This location was identified by the Resident Leadership Academy as a dangerous place for pedestrians during pickup and drop-off times because they felt that the vehicles did not necessarily respect pedestrians. The total project cost was $3,555, and the goal was to help increase community identity and ownership and also to support walkability and safety near the school. Our committee felt that this was a strong application because the Resident Leadership Academy identified this area as a dangerous spot, and we're also excited to see the school principal was really supportive and excited of the project. We also like that it was, community-led. Bayside hosted several design workshops and engaged the students at the elementary school. So it was really cool to see the fact that so many people in Linda Vista came together to participate in the design of the mural. Here's a before photo. And if you aren't familiar with intersection murals, the paint actually goes right in the center of the street. Here is the draft mural design. And so the crosswalk will actually act as a border on all four sides of the mural. Now, this project is still in progress. Bayside ran into some delays because the City of San Diego Arts and Culture Commission decided to hold all applications until the city adopted a placemaking policy. So at the end of April, the City Council approved a placemaking policy. So we're hopeful that the Arts and Culture Commission will now be able to approve the application and grant the permits for the project. And our third and final recipient of the mini-grant program is the Environmental Health Coalition, which is located in Barrio, Logan. The Environmental Health Coalition was funded for their project titled Reclaiming Healthy Outdoor Spaces in Barrio, Logan. This project included revitalizing an herb garden in Chicano Park and also enhancing the community space with a new mural, signage, and bench seating. The total cost for this project was $5,665. And this application stood out to the committee because the Environmental Health Coalition was able to leverage other funding to create a large impact in the community. We also like this project because it included the herb garden and artwork that celebrates the history and culture of the community. Here is a before photo, and then this is the draft mural design. This project is being wrapped up this month, and so we hope to be able to provide some more exciting updates of what the finished product looks like. Now I'd like to just take some time to go through some tips on the application process. Our first piece of advice is to focus on environmental change versus educational programming. In our last round of funding, we received a number of applications that had an educational focus, and so those were automatically disqualified. It's great to incorporate education into the project, but we do not necessarily want it to be the focus of the project. So an example of this would be rather than submitting an application to provide families with healthy cooking classes, a stronger application would be to create possibly a community garden, and then from that offer gardening or cooking classes as a supplement. So just again, I can't stress enough that the focus of this program is on environmental change. Our second piece of advice is to really demonstrate a collaboration. As you can see, the past recipients all were working in partnership with other community groups or organizations. They also had support from the city and community stakeholders. one area we had a number of schools apply for the mini-grant, and this is one of the areas where they lost points because oftentimes it seemed as if the project was maybe an idea of one teacher rather than a need that was identified, you know, either by a group of parents or by some of the students. So make sure that if you have a project and it is collaborative to, you know, tell us everyone that's involved just so we have a clear understanding of all of your key partners. Our third piece of advice is to think of ways to set your project apart from the rest. In our last round of funding, we received 11 applications for gardens. Some of them were at schools and others were throughout the community. We really felt like Environmental Health Coalition set their application apart because it encompassed more than the garden. It included the mural in addition to bench seating. So always think of ways to just set your project apart. Our fourth piece of advice is to have specific and measurable outcomes. So just tell us what you want to accomplish with your project and how you'll know if your project is a success. In our last round of funding, we had a tie between a few really strong applications, and it essentially boiled down to the outcomes. We want to know, you know, are you planning to do a pre and post assessment to measure change, or will you be doing pedestrian counts to see, you know, if walking and biking improved in a specific area? So be sure to just let us know how you plan to measure progress and success. Our last and final piece of advice is to make sure that your project is feasible, and that is in regards to budget and timeline. In our last round of funding, we had a couple really strong applicants that were almost tied, and when we looked at feasibility, we felt like one, you know, the organization that we selected had more feasibility as far as the funding that was already secured. You know, it's great if funding will be used for a small part of a larger project, but we want to make sure that if you are planning to leverage other funding, that a significant amount of it is already secured, or that we'll be confident that, you know, that it is secured, because otherwise it can create some concerns within the committee. Now we just like to point out some key dates. The grant applications are due June 8th by 5 o'clock p.m., and you can email them to me directly. The grants will be awarded July 13th, and then we'll execute the grant agreements by July 20th. All projects must begin within 2 months of the grant agreement, so that'll be September 20th. We also have a midpoint report that's due December 3rd. The midpoint reports are pretty brief, just so that we have a clear understanding of how the project's going, and if you have any concerns if you're selected. Projects all need to be complete by April 30th, and then the final report's due June 3rd. Finally, a few resources that we'd like to point out. There are a number of resources available on placemaking, so if you'd like to get some other ideas, all of the links to these resources are available on the mini-grant application. So now I'd just like to thank you for your time and then also open the floor to any questions.
Nina, we did have a couple of questions come in during the presentation.
Sure.
The first stated that religious activities are an unallowable expense. However, partnering with a faith site, such as a mosque or church, to make environmental change would be an allowable expense, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We just wanted to make sure that that it wasn't a specific religious activity that would be paid for, but as long as it's an environmental change, that would be an allowable expense to partner with a faith organization.
And the second question is a question, also a comment with a little more expounding upon. And the question reads, it sounds like you are looking more for projects in the community versus a school-specific project, even if all students will benefit. Can you expand on this?
Well, that is something that our committee had talked about, and we are open to having projects on school sites. I think the main thing is that whatever school is considering to apply, make sure you make the case as to the number of students that would be impacted by the project. I think that would be my first piece of advice. And second, if the school has any joint use rules where the space is then open to the community, I would also mention that so that we would know if the community, if the greater community has access to that space. But I think one of the drawbacks to the applications from the schools was that they didn't necessarily tell us how many students would benefit from the project. But I mean, historically we funded the project with national school districts, so we're definitely open to funding projects at schools.
A third question just came in, and it states, are these all environmentally focused? Are there any movement-oriented projects considered?
I'm wondering what movement-oriented versus environmental change, if someone could kind of expand, is that, I mean, if they're talking about like teaching exercise or fitness, that would not necessarily qualify. We really want to make a change in the environment. If that doesn't answer your question, though, feel free to expand on that, and I'm happy to provide any other information.
I think they were looking for like exercises for youth or yoga, and I think you did answer their question.
Okay, thank you.
We'll give just a couple more minutes for anyone that has a question to be able to type it in. And then if there are no more questions, Nina, do you have anything to follow up on?
Not at this time. Again, we're just really excited to be able to offer the mini-grant program out in the community. If you guys think of any questions following the webinar, feel free to email me or give me a call, and I'm happy to talk through any other questions with you.
We do have another question, and it says, would having some sort of hydration station qualify?
Yes, hydration station is listed as one of the acceptable or approved environmental changes. I would encourage whoever the applicant is to if you are wanting to do a hydration station, to maybe supplement that with something else to really make the application stand out. Our last round of funding, in addition to having those 11 applications on community gardens, we had a handful of hydration station applications, and they all seem very similar as far as, you know, purchasing a hydration station and then water bottles for the students. And the committee didn't feel like that was maybe as strong of an application because it, I don't know, it just didn't necessarily stand out as much as some of the other applications did. So if you do plan to apply for a hydration station, maybe think of another way to just make that application stand out.
And Nina, can you back your slides up to the slide of acceptable environmental changes?
Sure. Okay. Or you said examples, or this allowable versus unallowable? Or examples of environmental changes?
Examples of environmental changes.
Yeah.
Yes. We had a request to see that slide again.
Sure.
And then also give the slide a few seconds, and then we had someone ask if you could also show the slide with dates one more time.
Oh, yes, of course. And
and while you Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was going to just mention that all of the dates are outlined on the mini-grant application as well.
And Nina, there's one question asking for a little bit of clarification, and that's to clarify whether the changes should extend beyond simply benefiting a school to also benefiting the local community.
I would say, you know, if the change benefits the school, that's wonderful. And again, if you're able to tell us the number of students that will benefit from that change, that is completely acceptable. Another way, if you wanted to take the application to the next level, is if it could benefit both the school and the greater community. So it's definitely not required for schools to hit both points, but if you're able to, it's almost like I would think of that as like bonus points or something, because that would definitely just expand your reach beyond the school.
And Nina, will we be emailing the recording of this webinar out to participants?
Yes, we will be able to follow up with a recording email, and the recording will also be available on our website within the next week or so.
All right, another question. If the school has a small number of students and the project is school-wide, will the school be prioritized lower than a school with a larger enrollment?
I guess it kind of depends on the need as well. If it's a school that may not have as high of enrollment, but is an area of high need, I think the committee would also take that into consideration. It may also be beneficial, again, if there's a way that you can show a benefit to the greater community. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. It really depends on how the committee is reviewing the applications. And I think we'd also have to take the cost into consideration. So if it's maybe a smaller valued when I say valued, I mean like funded project, that would, you know, probably be more acceptable rather than funding the entire $5,700 amount to a school that may have limited reach if the project has limited reach. So I would just say, or Dan, were you going to add something?
I was just going to add that, you know, that the reach is just part of the criteria, and the socioeconomic status of the school and the students that attend would also play a large role in that.
Yeah.
Then Nina, another question, will you also be sending the PowerPoint out separately from the recording?
Sure, I think we could do that. Yeah, we can send both. We can send the attached PowerPoint and then the PowerPoint with the recording.
And then another question came in just asking, and I'm not sure you can answer this until we know how many applicants, but what are the chances of receiving this grant?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely difficult for us to quantify. In our first round of funding, we had 7 applicants, and we provided 2 mini-grants. And then in our last round of funding, we had 30 applicants and provided 1 round of funding. Just, you know, it's really based on the project and the types of projects that we receive. So just to give you an idea historically, but we really have no idea how many organizations are planning to apply this year. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
I don't see any more questions coming in, so we'll just give everyone a few more seconds to ask questions. We did get a comment that they appreciate the information and the opportunity, and thank you for sharing.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, I think if that's it, Nina, if you have any closing remarks.
Okay. Yes, again, so We hope to have you all apply for the mini grant. Again, the applications are due June 8th by 5 o'clock. In the meantime, if you think of any other questions, just please feel free to reach out to me directly. And we look forward to receiving your application.
All right, we'd like to thank everyone for attending, and please feel free to follow up with Nina with any questions you have. And we appreciate it and look forward to providing this application.